Yesterday we had 2 deal rooms, one for climate and one for FST Uganda. And I loved being in those deal rooms and just seeing the possibilities and the opportunities that could be, as there was a lot of investor matchmaking going on, which is basically enterprises or entrepreneurs being introduced to different kind of investors, all right? And while I was there, one of the key things I took away is that an investor-entrepreneur relationship is almost like marriage. You know, there has to be transparency, there has to be full commitment, there has to be loyalty, there has to be communication, there's need for effort from both sides, and you can't just walk away when you want to. But it is such a beautiful relationship, seeing somebody else pouring into another's dream and vision, and just wanting to empower them and build them up and be a part of the impact that they have. All right? So, Day 2 of Sankalp focuses on gender and youth. So that's what we'll be shining the spotlight on today. And speaking of spotlight, let's talk about the funding gap. Now, women entrepreneurs across Africa do amazing things, okay? Their businesses have great impact, reach a lot of people, and have so much depth in what it is that they do. However, these women are massively underrepresented when it comes to access to capital. In 2024, women-only founded businesses only had access to 1% of all the startup funding that was available in Africa. 1%. Now, startups that were run by female CEOs, I'm going to give you 2 seconds. Just think of a number and imagine what percentage that they got and have it at the top of your head. 2 seconds. 1, 1.5, 2. They had a whopping 2%, which is quite ridiculous if you ask me. It's crazy considering that women in Africa make up the larger percentage of the population, right? Now, that in itself, the 1% and 2%, is 4 times less than that was given out in 2023. It's like we are playing funding limbo, and the bar just keeps getting lower and lower and very, very fast. Right? Which is very sad if you ask me. And so today, this is one of the issues that we'll be addressing. In fact, this is the main issue that we'll be addressing. To shed more light on this, I would like to invite a champion for gender equality, the Africa Director at Sankalp, and one of our very own, Kanika Yadav. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome her to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. How are you feeling today? On a rating of 1 to 10. On a rating of 1 to 10. I hope it's 10. Or maybe 8 or 9. Yeah. So today, as my colleague Nicole mentioned, it's a very interesting and an important topic. And it is not just about women, but it is about men also. If we have to make a change, we have to get the men also involved in this conversation. So I'm very delighted that all of you are present today and be a part of this conversation. It is both a privilege and responsibility to be gathered here today to discuss an issue that is critical to Africa's economic transformation, the underrepresentation of women entrepreneurs in the funding space. As Nicole already mentioned, it's only 1% of the capital that goes to the women entrepreneurs. And she didn't mention, but this is stark and alarming, that the number has been decreasing. Over the last 5 years, earlier in 2022 or 2021, this number was 5%, and now the number has come to 1%. So rather than going on the positive trend, it is decreasing. So this is very, very alarming. The persistent funding gaps not just impact the women founders, it limits the potential of the entire economies. Women-led businesses are known to drive innovation, create jobs, and generate social impact, particularly in sectors such as agriculture, education, and healthcare, areas that are critical to Africa's sustainable development. When women entrepreneurs struggle to access capital, the ripple effect is felt in families, communities, and national economies. This plenary discussion and the rest of the 1.5 hours is not just about highlighting the challenges, it is about actionable solutions. While many investors and the financial institutions have expressed their commitment to gender-inclusive investing, and the reason is that while the intent is there, but the actions are not happening. So in this particular session, we also want to do what are the actionable solutions that needs to be implemented. We must ask ourselves, how can capital providers shift their investment strategies to be more inclusive of women entrepreneurs? What structural barriers need to be dismantled to ensure women have equal access to funding? And how can financial institutions, government, and other capital providers work together to bridge this gap? The answer to these questions require more than just the policy statements and the pledges. They demand new investment models, innovative financial instruments, and a commitment to tracking impact. At IntelliCap, we recognize that financing women entrepreneurs is not just about equity, it is about economic efficiency and smart investing. Our work in gender lens investing is guided by 3 core principles. The first, increasing access to capital for women entrepreneurs. Through innovative financing solutions and gender-focused investment frameworks, we help channel funds to women-led businesses that are often overlooked by traditional investors. Secondly, we believe that an ecosystem and a cohesive ecosystem is very, very critical for the growth of the women entrepreneurs. So we facilitate collaboration between investors, development financial institutions, ESOs, bank, and anybody who is a champion for women entrepreneurship to create a network that nurtures and scales the women-owned businesses. And lastly, the third very critical thing that we do at IntelliCap is tracking the gender impact and leveraging data for systematic change. We emphasize measuring impact beyond financial returns, ensuring that investments drive long-term social and economic transformation for women and their communities. While we know that access to capital, access to finance is a critical element, but this is not only the part of the solution. To create lasting change, we must also leverage storytelling. There are a lot of successful women entrepreneurs, but their stories are not coming out. So we have to create more and more stories and leverage their storytelling to reshape the investor narratives and highlight the success of women entrepreneurs. Secondly, we have to strengthen collaboration between the different players in the ecosystem. They can be investors, ecosystem enablers, and policy makers to build a more inclusive investment landscape. And lastly, we have to prioritize investment practices that focus on sustainable business models rather than short-term financial returns. The data is clear. Now the responsibility lies with each of us in this room to take meaningful steps towards closing the gender funding gap. Let this discussion not just be about the conversation about the challenges, let it be a turning point where we commit changing investment behaviors, rethinking risk perceptions, and redesigning financial instruments that truly empower women entrepreneurs. By doing so, we are not just supporting women-led businesses, we are unlocking Africa's full economic potential and shaping a more inclusive, equitable, and prosperous future for all. Thank you all for joining us for this very important conversation, and I hope you find it meaningful in this part of the conversation and rest of the day also. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I love how she said it's not just about women, but men also, right? Because all these businesses, they influence and they bring impact to all our lives, whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's the child of a man or a woman, right? And I love that she also said that if we don't address this funding gap, we are limiting the potential of the entire economy. So to illustrate this further, we have a special treat for you. We have a short skit by some incredibly talented individuals who are entrepreneurs by day, but have managed to be budding actors by night. Now, the skit does not speak to the entire process of fundraising. It is just a general representation of what it is. And so the entrepreneurs that we have that are coming on stage are just, quote unquote, representing a very small percentage of what it is to fundraise. And so I hope that we all get to enjoy the skit, and I hope that we all get to have fun, okay? Learn from it. Whatever takeaway you get from it, write it down. But more importantly, I hope you guys have fun. All right? Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the stage Leah and Joseph from Jaza Center.
Soft background music plays in the cafe. Leah sits at a table, reviewing her notes, murmuring to herself.
Pitch deck on check, numbers on my fingertips. But wait. I think something is missing.
Joseph walks in.
Leah, why do you look so serious and stressed? Pitching is storytelling with numbers. And you know, investors love confidence.
Oh, really? So I should just walk in, throw in a few buzzwords, like scaling or disruptive, and then boom, funding.
Exactly. I mean, watch this. My new innovation at Jaza Center is going to create over 6.7 million jobs to marginalized women in the next 10 years in Africa.
Taryn, shall I just get my whole family enrolled?
You're funny. You see, Joseph, I know my numbers. The challenge is I need to prove that I can run my business and run my family, while you just need to prove that you can run a business.
You know, really, investors ask me about my family. They just imagine I'm a business genius.
Must be nice.
Leah and Joseph head to the investors' meeting. The office pristine with sleek furniture and an air of authority.
Yeah.
They both straighten their posture, knowing that they present themselves might determine the outcome of their pitch. Leah and Joseph sit across the investor. He's flipping through the pitch deck.
How are you, sir?
Very
How are
well.
you doing?
Well,
Come on.
thank you.
Okay, tell me about you.
Thank you. My name is Joseph Geshonge. With me is my co-founder at Jaza.
Leah Imaita Kishunge. And according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics Economic Survey, we have over 6 million modern households across Kenya that depend on domestic workers and care workers. Majority of these households experience poor service delivery, unprofessionalism, and unreliability, leading to loss of time and money.
Jaza Center exists to provide reliable, affordable, ethical, domestic workers in Kenya and beyond. We are seeking $1 million USD to accelerate our social impact and grow our business.
This investment will go into tech and innovation, market development, capacity building, and other additional costs.
Oh, excellent. How was it? That's a good investment. Now, tell me about your scheme.
We're looking to roll out a franchise model across the 47 counties in Kenya and all the major cities in East Africa.
Nice.
In addition, we are developing a mobile application to link over 6.7 skilled domestic care workers with potential employers real time.
Oh, excellent. Now, tell me about your business model.
Yes, we have a proven revenue model and
Before that, Madam Leah, right?
yes.
Tell me, how will you be able to run your business with your personal commitments?
You mean like sleeping? eating, and occasionally having a life?
No, you're not getting me. I'm talking about family. I'm talking about kids. And I'm talking about marriage.
You know what frustrates me the most? Women are expected to prove that they belong in business, while men are assumed to belong. When I walk into a room, I'm asked about my ability to balance between my family and my business, as if my entrepreneurial ambitions cannot coexist with my family responsibilities. When I ask for funding, I have to justify why I need it, while men just walk in with confidence. You know what? This system was not built for us. Women were not seen to be business owners, leaders, or even risk takers. But we keep showing up. We keep proving them wrong. And one day, they will don't need to ask, because they will just know. Don't worry. I have trained my dog to run my board meetings in my absence.
Can I borrow your dog?
No.
Enough of business. Now, let's talk about business. You're talking about your business model.
Yes, we have a proven revenue model with our main source of income being outsourcing. And of course, with expansion, we anticipate to have more revenue streams.
Okay, nice. I'll give you a call.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I never thought entrepreneurship was about, I thought entrepreneurship was about ideas and how to execute those ideas. I never imagined that gender had a role to play.
Welcome to my world.
The investor remains in the office, thinking to himself,
all these years, I thought I was evaluating business fairly. But what if my bias has held back brilliant ideas? How many layers have been overlooked while I shook hands with Joseph's? It's not just about funding. It's about changing the way we see leadership. Maybe it's time I challenge not just startups, but myself.
the end.
Thank you everyone. Did I mention, by the way, Leah and Joseph are entrepreneurs. Like, this is not their day job, right? They did this for us. They practiced and worked on this for us, which I think is very incredible. They've done an incredible job. In my youth, I have taken up a few acting roles, mainly of inanimate objects, tables and chairs here and there. And seeing Leah and Joseph and what they've done in this short period has made it very clear to me why I was very gently nudged into managing theater and getting off the stage, but that's neither here or there. So that skit perfectly captured the challenges that female entrepreneurs experience when they do fundraising, okay? And the funding disparity is not only just unfair and quite huge, but again, very unfair, but it's also a huge missed opportunity. So first and foremost, on a scale of to if we can remember the numbers that I've mentioned, Kanika has mentioned, what is the percentage of the startup funding that women are getting? Can we try again? A majority of us are just staring and smiling. So let's try again. On a scale of to what percentage are women founders and women in businesses getting? I see. Very well done. Thank you, guys. For those of us who are just joining, it is 1% for women, women-only founded businesses, and 2% for women-led businesses. You guys have done great. Clap for yourselves. Good job. I'm glad no one was asking for a hug. Everyone was very clear on where it was. But if anyone wants a hug later, see me. I give very good hugs. Okay? All right. Thank you, guys. So now, these businesses, they create jobs, drive social impact, and often focus on sectors like agriculture, healthcare, and education. To dive deeper, I'd like to welcome back our champion for gender equality, Kanika Yadav. Kanika will set the stage for a panel discussion with some equally incredible women who will share actionable strategies for investors and capital providers. So ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Kanika back to stage. Like we mean it? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just quickly introduce our panelists for this particular panel discussion. So we have Susan Situma from AECF. We have Flora from Melvin Marsh International. We have Wendy from IFC, and we have Mabola from Capria Ventures. So I'll invite all of you to please come on the stage. And the women entrepreneurs face when they are fundraising. And with this, I will actually like to start the conversation with Flora, who is the CEO and the founder of Melvin Marsh International. And if you are from Kenya or you keep coming to Kenya for a frequent time, I think you will have definitely seen the Melvin's tea in your hotels, in your cafes, everywhere. Melvin's tea is almost everywhere that you go, all the different flavored tea. And so, Flora, so you've been a woman entrepreneur for a long time. And then what's your experiences how women entrepreneurs can better position themselves to access funding? What are some of the practices that have worked for you to overcome barriers like lack of collateral, limited access to networks, in traditional funding, which other female entrepreneurs can also learn from you?
Thank you very much and good morning. Like you heard, I'm Flora Mtahi. And before I answer that, let me take you on a small journey on how I began. So my story began with a rude awakening, where I was a college student, I did finance. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I followed the financial route. I started doing my professional exams. But 9 months into it, and I was working in an audit firm, I was more interested in the factory floor than the audit. And somebody called me out, actually the dean of the college called me out and said, be true to yourself. So I went home and I resigned from my 9 months employment stint. And that is when my rude awakening began. I was brought up in a very equal home, studied everywhere, anywhere I wanted in the world. And I came home and I said, I want to start business, I want money. And they look at me like, are you crazy? Are you okay? We brought you up, you're supposed to get married, and you're the one who resigned from your job. Actually, I think in fact I was threatened to leave the house. They said, listen, we don't know who you are and we don't know what this is about. I think you need to leave. Anyway, long story short, I then started, that was the first time I actually had the guts to say, I want to be an entrepreneur. There was no such a cute word at my time. This is 30 years ago, so I was saying, I want to be a business person. And I went out and I learned, and I believe in doing things that are not in the market, so there was no free-flowing salt, and I went and found free-flowing salt in the market. I mean, how to learn. I learned in the university how to do it, and I launched it. And then I found an opportunity in tea, and I said there was no flavored tea in the market. So Melvin's was the first in free-flowing, but so I think the question is around how do women get out. So I then twisted my mom and I said, you have to. And I found an IFC fund that was collateral, I think it's collateral-based, backed. So if they put up half the funding, then I'd be able to get the other half. Mark you, I've gone out and found this by myself. I'm still being threatened to move out of the house. I'm still being threatened to go back to work. And I found this funding, and they said, all you have to do is do training for 2 weeks, and we'll give you the funding. So behind my father's back, my mother then gave me a little bit, not a lot, because I guess she had a home to maintain. And, from there, then I just kept pushing and screaming and, asking the bank manager. I used to bounce checks normally. It was not a problem to me because it was 300 shillings to bounce a check. But it managed to get me to get my supplies from the supplier and then deliver and come back. So question is, what should women do? Don't do what I did. But I think the most important thing is to learn to push the envelope. I mean, had I not gone around, I think I went around over 10 banks until I found this IFC funded thing. Learn to push back. These days, what I do when I want to finance, I finance with stock loans, I finance with invoice discounting. Melvin's is now trying to go large into exports. I even know when I get the big export order where I will go. And it's something we've studied. When I was the chairperson of Kenya Association of Manufacturers, we actually noticed that women are very fearful about getting money. So the first person who gives you money, you sort of stay there. And we need to learn to get out, step out, and learn to challenge the system. So it's really looking and having the confidence. It's not easily there. I'm talking 30 years later. This is why I sound so confident, but I've gone through the journey of just growing up through the process. But most importantly is to have just the guts to ask, to train, to push, and to challenge these banks. They're quite crazy.
That's such a wonderful insight, Flora, that we have to keep challenging and keep getting out and pushing ourselves. Yeah, we know that there's no level playing field, so as of now, we have to keep challenging. Yeah, thanks for that. Moving to Susan. So Susan, many investors highlight that there are not enough investment-ready women-led businesses. Do you see this as a perception issue, or it's actually a real challenge?
Thank you, Kanika, and good morning. My name is Susan Setumar. My background is really in the banking sector. I've worked in the banking sector for almost 20 years, and now moving to ACF where we're doing development finance. So I've met Flora trying to get funding, and I agree with her fully. You need to push the envelope as women entrepreneurs. For the questions that you've asked me around, whether it's a perception or it's real, honestly, it depends on how you look at it and who you are. Because when I think about it, many of the women entrepreneurs are actually running smaller businesses that are in more competitive and low margin markets. And therefore, if you're a funder and your fund size is from $500,000 US, you're not gonna find them. So there's more that needs to be done to go lower in the ticket sizes that are available for women. We're running a program right now for the Blue Economy Kenya, funded by Global Affairs Canada, and part of our work was actually to do a market research, and we found that 75% of women entrepreneurs in that sector are actually very informal. And you think about the formality that banks have, and you've got to ask yourself, is that what is probably stopping them from getting to formal financing? And we've had to do a lot of work to try and see how do we get them to put their things in order. Actually, in many of the cases, even for another program that we're running in Kakuma with IFC, actually, we had to do an accelerator to actually get them to put the right governance structure in place for us to be able to get in and fund them. And actually, just realizing that women start from the point of, I need to make a living, I need to have work-life balance. So clearly I can't be able to look after my children and still be able to go to work. So you find that's where they're starting from, and therefore there's need to continue hand-holding them in the process and helping them to see the bigger vision of what they can be with their enterprise. And in this case, I think about one of our enterprises that we funded in Kakuma. We found her just doing a tailoring for the refugees. And that's how she started. But having a conversation with her, she thought, oh, wow, I can start training other women to actually begin supporting themselves. So she started now a tailoring school. I visited her earlier this year, and now she wants to actually do a proper TVET. She's thought about it. She's like, she's such a good trainer. So can I do hospitality and help the women to actually be able to do more. So you can see how women really start resilient and sustainable businesses. And I think there is need for us to really think beyond what you see to actually be able to continue working and hand-holding them through the process. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for that, Susan. And just building on that, Wendy, Susan mentioned about that a lot of the businesses are informal businesses. A lot of women businesses are own informal businesses. Then where do you think, which are the sectors, high potential sectors or the industries where women entrepreneurs are thriving or have untapped potential that organizations like you can use and support?
Thanks. Yeah, we definitely, I mean, what we know about entrepreneurship in Africa is that women are very, very active on the continent as entrepreneurs. But it's always challenging to get them into the more formal sectors, into the growth sectors. They're very much concentrated in these low margin sectors, as you've said, and that really creates barriers for them to grow. One of the important reasons to be supporting women entrepreneurs is because as they grow, they also employ more women. And so they're really an important force for female labor force participation and also bringing other women into formal working sectors. So helping them formalize, helping them grow, helping them have the ambition to take that next step and to take the risk is really important. So we see it's really important to help women think about careers and entrepreneurship in non-traditional sectors. Obviously, the green economy and the green transition is a huge economic opportunity. It's about 26 trillion globally that will be, wealth that will be changing hands because of the green transition. Women need to be at the forefront of that. We need to get women who are the innovators, who are really thinking about how the climate transition can help their communities, their markets, their countries, and not, letting the traditional biases prevent us from supporting them to do this work. So that's why the work that all of you are doing here is so great, and some of the conversations I've had on climate are really, really critical. But anything also that's tech-related, getting women much more into tech, manufacturing, things that are not considered, the traditional women's work is important. Having said that, the care economy is a growth economy. There's so many opportunities for innovation. There's so much opportunity for bringing technology and bringing innovation into that sector, and there's huge demand. So it's also a big growth space. If we don't think of it as just the low margin, services, we think of it as the whole complex of providing a broader set of care services in the ecosystem. So we look at all of those things and really think about how to help elevate women from maybe the informal sector, the smaller firms, micro, to help them grow and get bigger.
Thanks, Wendy, for that. Care economy is actually a very, very interesting topic. We also have been working on this for some time now, and what we have seen is that if the innovations and the finance moves in the care economy, that can actually lead to a lot more women entrepreneurship support and scale and empowerment of the woman, because as we all know that we, the women, are still the primary caregivers, irrespective of whatever the role that we are playing professionally. So there is a need for support, and the care innovations can provide that. Thanks again. Moving to Mabula. Mabula, despite the growing recognition of the gender financing gap, why does the progress remain slow in closing it? Where do you see the most critical gaps in funding mechanisms, and how can the investment community address them?
Thank you, Kanka. So, hello everyone. Yes, progress is slow, but I think I would say that the gender financing gap is a persistent and complex issue, right? So it is not a simple matter. And it stands to reason that there is no simple solution, right? So it is a big, complex issue, and it will take time. So we have to be ready for that. But that doesn't mean that we should not make progress, we should not expect to see progress. And in my view, I think the most important thing to accelerate progress is to make a business case for female entrepreneurship and including women more in business. So oftentimes in these conversations, we lead by the, I don't know, social aspects, by the inequity in excluding women from business, right? And this is all true, right? But when you're talking about investing and money, right, you have to show an investor why is it worth my while to do this. And so while there are social benefits and benefits to the society, etc., and it does make sense to be equitable, you have to also show why it makes sense from a financial and business perspective to include women, more women in business. I think the biggest gap that exists in funding for female entrepreneurs is at the early stage, right? So very early pre-seed seed investing stage, and even earlier, because I think there are structural reasons why women tend to have less wealth to start a business, right? So women struggle more to raise the initial seed capital, where entrepreneurs typically would use their own funding or savings, or tap into friends and family to get the initial seed capital for their business. And women struggle more at this stage because typically, for many reasons, women have less accumulated wealth. They also have less access to networks and other people that may potentially fund them. So I think that is where there is the biggest gap for women entrepreneurs, is at the very early stages. And as investors, I'm from the venture capital sector. I work for a VC firm. But generally, as investors, what can we do to address this gap? So I've already made the point earlier to make a business case, lead with why it makes sense financially and economically to support diverse teams. But also, I think investors should walk the talk. So also, amongst themselves, internally embrace diversity. So it is already known, right? The statistics show that companies led by diverse teams perform 20 to 30% better than companies that are not diverse, right? So this is what investors really need to lean into. It's also known that female investors are more likely to invest in female entrepreneurs. So representation and diversity at the level of the investors themselves is really important. So at Capria, for instance, 50% of our leadership team is female, and about 40% of our broader team is female. And that representation is really important if you really want to get more capital into the hands of female entrepreneurs. But then also, when we invest, as already demonstrated here, the first step is just to really be aware of the biases that play out. A lot of them are unconscious, and I actually have seen them in real life. It's not just the stuff that fairy tales are made of. So that very first step is to just be aware of your biases and to check them. And then the last thing is to use systems and processes that reduce bias, right? So there's actually bias is unavoidable. Like, we're all humans. There's just no way of completely eliminating them. But you can use systems, technology, data, artificial intelligence to minimize the bias. So there's more objectivity in the process, and women are less likely to be excluded or ruled out or sidelined in the process. I'll stop there for now.
Yeah. That's very wonderful, Mabola, to know that 50% of your leadership is actually female. And in the earlier discussion, we discussed that it's only 1% of the funding that is going to the women entrepreneurs. And there is another statistics which says that there is actually less than 10% of the capital providers within the investment committee of the capital providers, there is female representation. So both these things are linked to each other. The lesser the women on the supply side and lesser the women that are receiving the capital. So we have to make change on both sides. If more women are involved in taking the decisions and where the capital will flow, these unconscious biases in some form will get removed and more capital assumingly will move towards women entrepreneurs. Thanks for that insight, Mabula, again. And Flora, moving to you again, what role do you think the large women-led businesses like Melvin Marsh play in supporting smaller women entrepreneurs in the ecosystem? Do you have any examples that you can share with the audience here?
Yes, I do. Like I mentioned when I was, I think I mentioned, when I was the chairperson of Kenya Association of Manufacturers, we noticed that I was the first female chairperson after 57 years. So then we started looking around, where are women manufacturers? Why is this the case? And we realized there are very few. Yet, you think about it, very many women manufacture. You know, I have a little small, I do some milling, I bring sweaters, I do crisps, women are always having these side hustles, which is manufacturing. So created a program when I was there called Women in Manufacturing. And, we actually started getting funding and etc. And one of the biggest things that we were doing was just mentorship, coaching, fireside chats, and then we started going towards financial institutions and asking them, now, can we green channel these people? Can you start looking at them, because we've made sure that they are trained and mentored. And I must say now it has become a strong, formidable part of the association, and it continues to grow. So that is something we're pretty proud about. I didn't stop there. When I left, I also did the same thing in my organization. I think it was during COVID. I was bored, and I said, listen, why don't I also mentor entrepreneurs who are also in the journey? Finally, now that I'm still bored, it's 29 years running my own business, so I've sort of stepped back and I've started something else, because I'm starting to see a new challenge. It is not only money that women need. It is confidence, it is a sounding board, it is how do I scale? Because the skill set of running a business and scaling a business are totally different. So I personally now have started a program called Scale Mastery, where I'm trying to mentor women. Well, I am mentoring women who now to scale their businesses to the next level. And exactly what we're discussing here is the same problems. Yes, we need money and bigger money, and we go through the same issues yet again. So it's something that I'm doing. I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, it's something that definitely women need to do a lot more of. We also push a lot for fireside chats, visiting the large organizations. And you'd be surprised when I call any, let's say, industrialist, and I say, we want to come and have a visit. I want to bring women to come and have a visit and see what a large organization. Yes. And what else do you want? So the mentoring, the coaching is there, but the hard, the finances, market access, how do I get into a market? How do I train them to get into markets? That's where it becomes difficult. But I've been fortunate enough because of the positions also pushing government around policy, making sure they also push for market access. So that's been interesting. But my challenge again with the Scale Master is, how much can Flora do?
Yeah, thanks, Flora. I think Flora can do a lot. So I don't know if all of you got that takeaway, that Flora is actually running a mentoring and a coaching program. So any women entrepreneurs here in the room, I'm inviting them to on behalf of Flora to please feel free to reach out to her. And the other thing that she also mentioned is that after 57 years, there was a female chairperson of the KEPSA, which is a Kenyan Private Sector Association. So this also again shows that basically you have to keep challenging, you have to keep pushing. It's not just for you, it's for the generations and the other women entrepreneurs. You are seeing the trend that they can also leverage. Thank you. Thanks, Flora, for that. Susan, coming to you. So now there is like a lot of focus on advancing women in investing to close the gender financing gap. Do you think it is effective strategy to catalyze finance for women?
I definitely think it's an effective strategy, because when you think about it, what are we trying to address? It's gender bias. Yeah? I'll tell you, when I was in the bank, I facilitated a training on gender bias. And it was interesting listening to the male relationship managers say, this lady just comes from the market at the end of the day, she's running, she has her kids, And to him, it's chaos, you know? And for her, she's coming literally with a transaction, and she wants attention. So you need to actually put yourself in her shoes to see that you need to be patient and discuss with her, okay, how else can we support you so that you don't have to run to the bank at the end of the day? Is there a way you could fund, you could bank? So for me, getting women investors is a way to go in terms of even ensuring that the investments are more inclusive and they understand and getting a more balanced portfolio in that respect. I think the other thing I wanted to say is there's a role in strengthening the associations that Flora has talked about, because that's the only way women as well get access to industry leaders that otherwise they wouldn't be able to access directly, and also be able to understand the policies that govern the areas that they're getting into. So in that respect, I think it's very important for us to strengthen that, but at the same time, build programs that are more gender sensitive or gender included, gender integrating, actually. So that then it's not just about having a fund, but it's about having a fund that is actually looking for specific women. And that way, you get to have technical assistance that's directed towards bringing these women on board and therefore working with them at their level. And definitely also working with the leaders in the communities to change the social and cultural norms that exist. You'll be surprised in many of the programs that we have, especially even in Nigeria, because we are in Kano, we are working with the religious leaders to actually change the perception of women actually going to work. I think in Kakuma, the men were telling us, no, you just give the women money, you know? So it's not enough to say, let's address women. I think it's also about bringing the male in and them seeing the benefit of the women enterprises here.
Thank you for that, Susan. Very interesting point. And just building on that, Wendy, from your experience of facilitating finance for women entrepreneurs across the global south, what, according to you, is the role of women in Africa's informal economy? And where are some of the successful pathways implemented by your initiative that you are leading, the WIFI, to formalize and invest in their businesses that can be successfully adopted in Africa?
Yeah, thank you. Before going into that, I wanted to say also, the mentoring is really critical, and it's amazing when there's women like Flora who can mentor other women, but we also need men to be doing that because there's only so many Floras out there. And so that role of being coaches, mentors, allies is really critical for men out there, and I know many of the men here already do that, so it's really great. The program that I run, WIFI, the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative, which is housed at the World Bank. It works around the world, actually, not just in Africa, supporting women entrepreneurs. And we work through the multilateral development banks. So here in Africa, we work with IFC, World Bank, the African Development Bank and Islamic Development Bank, and in Northern Africa also with EBRD. And so we have a wide range of programs that we're doing supporting women entrepreneurs, about half of which are access to finance. And that includes both on the debt side and the equity side. So we do a lot of work with banks, a lot of the work trying to help the banks kind of shine the mirror on themselves to look at their own staffing, things like that, but really a lot of work on products, services, and what would work best for women, like looking at products that don't require as much collateral, or where they could use inventory, receivables for financing. Women are less likely to have the same kind of collateral that men do, so we want to look at that. But we also do work with accelerators and incubators and funds, helping them think through some of the things that many of you have already thought through, of strategies of how to reach more women, how to identify more women, how to build up their skill sets so that they're ready for financing. And that's really a critical part of what we do. And then we do other work like helping women get access to procurement contracts, or supply chains, working with corporations. So there's and we do research as well and policy work. But one of the things that we've found is working through individual institutions Even when we're working with 2 or 3 institutions in a country, we still find the same systemic challenges when you go to the next institution and the next institution. So we've really been working over the last couple of years to develop what we call more like a systems change effort in line with what a lot of the people at Sankalp think of doing, working with the regulators, with the associations, with the financial institutions, to get them all working together to make sure that they've got the internal champions, that they're really leading on these issues, that they're collecting the data, which can be such a big problem for getting new products and services out the door, and then also for getting new financing lines, working with our partners to get new credit lines, new financing lines, new equity out there. So we're really trying to push our partners to do a lot more in this space as well. And that systemic change is really important.
Completely agree to that. I think it's the systematic change that needs to be brought in to make the difference for the women entrepreneurs. Just quickly, after I ask this question to Mabula, we'll also open the question to the audience. So if any of you want to ask any questions to these panelists, please feel free to come up with these questions, but also raise your hands. We will give that opportunity to ask the questions to the panelists as well. So think anything that you want to ask. Mobola, do you think the strategies like the blended finance or the microfinance or the crowdfunding, all these different types of initiatives that have been created to support the women entrepreneurs, that can catalyze capital to flow to women entrepreneurs? And how does Capria integrate gender lens in its investment process? If you could share some examples.
Sure. So I think there is a place for every type of financing, and they all play a role in catalyzing funding to female entrepreneurs. But I think ultimately we want to get to the place where funding to female entrepreneurs is mainstreamed, right? So there is a place for microfinance, there is a place for crowdfunding platforms that are particularly designed for female entrepreneurs or to fund female entrepreneurs. But by and large, you get investors who are self-selecting, right, that want to support female entrepreneurs for whatever reason. But I think we will not really start to see large-scale, growth in the funding and moving the needle until it's mainstream. We no longer need to make the distinction that this is a female entrepreneur, this is a male entrepreneur, and so on and so forth. So I think there's a place for every kind of funding, but ultimately we want to be aiming for mainstreaming. And how does Capria embrace diversity in its investment process? So I've already mentioned how we ensure that we are internally diverse ourselves. And then I've also mentioned a little bit about how using data and technology in the investment process to reduce bias and increase the objectivity. But beyond that, we also work with other funds, where we invest in other funds, and we have a network of fund managers. So we work with those fund managers also and encourage them to embrace diversity both internally and then in their portfolios. And then finally, as other panelists have mentioned, women need more than money. They need a network, they need a community. So we also work with and support communities and networks, organizations that actively support and mentor and provide resources to female entrepreneurs.
Thank you. That's wonderful to know what Capria has been doing. And I think this is one of the some of the things that other investors can also learn from Capria that are intending to make gender-led investing more mainstream. Okay, so now before I go to the closing remarks towards the panelists, I will ask if anybody wants to ask any. Okay.
Access to credit lines, etc., stymie the business growth. But it seems to me a women-only fund should be insightful if that was tried and then researched.
the others. My view is that there's room for both, but if you coordinate off only to women-only funds, you're going to end up with a very, very small portion of funding that's going to women. So we really need to get the bulk of the funding and the general purpose funds really thinking about how they get more women into their pipeline if we want the larger numbers of women to get access to financing. Having said that, I do know there are several women-only funds, and I think there is a place for that, and it's important for really driving an agenda that's very focused on specific sectors, specific industries, and especially where the movement, we're just not able to move the needle with the more mainstream funds.
I just wanted to add that for ACF, we are an African funder, primarily focusing in agribusiness and renewable energy sectors and businesses that really would mitigate the effects of climate. So we're very specific, and in that respect, we do have a fund that is funded by actually Global Affairs Canada that is running in 4 countries, that is a women-only fund. But it is actually spurring growth in certain sectors, to her point. So like in Kenya, it's in the blue economy, and therefore we are trying to get women to get engaged in the blue economy. In Nigeria, we're looking at farmer groups, cooperatives, that would work to be able to supply, because it's more male-dominated businesses in Nigeria. And in Benin, Burkina Faso, working with them to actually adopt climate-smart technologies in agriculture. So it works in that way. So I do agree with Wendy. Yeah.
And I just wanted to add that in the venture and impact investing space, there are definitely now a number of gender-lens funds or women-only funds. But with the typical 10-year fund life for a VC fund, an impact fund, a PE fund, and these funds are, in general, were started within the last 5 years or so. So it will be another probably 5 years before we have hard data that can be used to provide evidence that there is value to investing in female entrepreneurs. But they are there.
Just from a pragmatic point of view, I know the world, I think it was AGF, gave collateral, gave the commercial banks collateral funding to actually give women-led businesses up to 75% collateral free. I can tell you it doesn't happen. And I go to the bank and I'm like, I know you're getting this from AGF, can I have it? And they said, no, you know what? The cost of drawing down, and I don't know what, and I don't know what. So, and I do understand that the scale, they want to move it, they have to move it through commercial banks. But I think that's yet another challenge. It's going to be growth, and it's going to be for us to demand more of it, but there is a definite challenge there. Secondly, even when I got my second loan, my first one was collateral, my second loan, the bank actually said, listen, leave this IFC loan, I'll give you the similar terms. So there's also that competition going on that we need, yet another bias that I guess we need to deal with.
Thank you. Any other question? Anybody else wants to ask any other?
I like whatever you've said about most of our businesses, they're mostly informal. But then when it comes to now seeking funding, especially when you're doing proposals, sometimes you find the proposals are just high level, such that I work with women from underserved communities. So they really don't understand what they're supposed to put into that. As we're working towards helping them to be formalized, how can we be able to make the application process to be as simple as someone who is not highly informed about the language of the funders, they're not able to understand what they really want, but you go to the ground, they're really working. They're doing a lot. So maybe you can look into that. How can we be able to make the process, the application process, the proposal to be as simple as possible? Or even you can be able to send someone from maybe your office, they can come to the ground and see what is being done so that they don't bar them from getting these funds. Thank you.
So what we've actually done is, before we launch a call for interest, we get stakeholders in the room to just take them through what's the criteria, help them understand what it is that we want to find. And we've gone a step further and also then started doing sort of like accelerator programs that support, especially for the women programs, that allow them to put their documents together. For the program in Kakuma, for example, I don't think would have funded any woman. In the initial first call, I think we had 3 enterprises, and now we have more women enterprises, but we had to do that. So we are alert to what is needed, but then again, it goes back to if it's not gender integrating program, will you take the effort to actually keep going and helping the women entrepreneurs? So there's more that is needed to actually ensure that before we mainstream, that actually they are gender integrating programs that allow you to actually do the work. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Susan. And we are almost coming to the end of the session. But we received a lot of questions to the QR code, but unfortunately, in the interest of time, we can't take that. But we will share those questions with the panelists, and hopefully, we'll be able to share the responses as well with you. So I'll just ask all the panelists to give closing remarks, a 1 line or 2 lines, a brief statement. And as you give your closing remarks on this topic of the improving the flow of capital to the women entrepreneurs, there was a very interesting question that I don't want to miss out, is that it's the perception of borrowing from the women entrepreneurs themselves. A lot of times the women entrepreneurs are not willing to take the loan themselves. So they are afraid, they are scared, or they don't want to. So if you want to add that thing into your closing remarks, please feel free to. And maybe we can start with Flora and then Mabola and Susan and Wendy.
It is very true. Actually, there is empirical evidence that shows that women are more risk-averse than men. I think the other one that was more scary to us when we were doing the women in manufacturing is we noticed men start business to say, I have a big business, and I have a business, and this is what I do, and this is how many millions I have. But a woman starts a business, usually entrepreneurs, is for the comfort of their lives. They want to be able to be there for their children, for their, to have. So obviously then even the way we approach our business is totally different. So yes, the whole mindset conversation is a big one. So it's to tell women, yes, you're in this, and why not scale, and what do you need to do to actually make this happen? So my closing remarks would be, I imagine a world where we need to restructure the way we give funding. For example, there's statistics, you guys have them, the banks have them. Women, the repayment loan of women is way higher than men. And then on top of that, you tend to, because of moving of assets, we tend to bank with banks for a long time. So why doesn't that give me any space? The minute I think it was IRS, I think 16 or 19 came, oh, we need more collateral. Oh, but I've always paid my loans. So I'm looking at a stage, and I do know apparently in Ethiopia, there's a place where, there was something that was tried, and they would actually give you a loan based on just what's that thing called? Psychographic? No, when they test who you are, your personality. Psychometrics. Yeah, so that for me is what I think we need to do. We need to start reimagining. We need to start working with entrepreneurs more in the stages that they are. There's a lot of money right now for startups and beginners. I think as we are scaling, we are starting to find it's getting more and more challenging, because what everybody says, listen, you're mainstream, it's okay. But remember, we're still not the guys. We're still not out there with 55 plots and, family inheritance and whatever. So our assets are not the same. Yes, we've diversified our assets, but not at the same level. So for me, I think it's just to make sure you walk with the woman throughout their journey.
Thank you. Thanks, Flora, for that. Yeah, Mabola, like a brief closing remarks from your side.
Sure. So I think really my closing statement is really just to be very conscious of the narrative that we put out there around female entrepreneurs and funding to female entrepreneurs. So we have to be very mindful that we are, that is backed by substance, right? So I totally agree that telling the stories of successful women entrepreneurs who have accessed funding is important. But it has to be more than just storytelling. Storytelling has to be backed by substance, and we need to find that information, put that information out there, not just it's not just a branding, a window dressing effort, right? Because it doesn't do credit, doesn't do justice to the female entrepreneurs that are doing the hard work, that are, that are out there building businesses, thriving and growing. So let's be careful of that narrative. Let's tell stories, but let's tell stories that are backed by substance, so that we move beyond the poor women, or this is not a pity. We're not asking for sympathy. We're not asking for charity. As I said, it is a business imperative.
Thank you. Susan?
Yeah, I think for me, it's thinking around women enterprises and how they are more resilient and sustainable, and asking, would we move beyond dollar returns to think about how we're investing in women entrepreneurs, to think about their social impact, whether it is energy transition, whether it is the impact that they're actually having on the communities where they are, and also thinking about gender transformation, and really then saying, how do you build in, like for us, I mean, me having worked on both sides, where I've worked in the financial sector and now in development finance, and seeing the need to actually have concessional funding that is blended, that allows you to do the work with the enterprise to actually be able to formalize them, but at the same time be able to drive the impact that is needed. Yeah.
For me, I think in this day and age, there really any financial institution, any intermediary, really must have a gender lens on the work that they're doing. So it's important that everyone understand. It's very different for a bank versus a fintech versus a fund, what the business case is for serving women in that market. So it's not one size fits all. Even banks have a lot of very different approaches that we see. But in order to understand the business case and really see how to support, it's critical to have the internal view on the balance on your investment teams, making sure there's women who are part of your decision-making processes, that you have the data that shows you how you're doing in terms of your investments in women, and also your internal storyline, and then also that you have products and services that really are accessible and appropriate for women in your market, in the kinds of industries that you're looking to do. So just to encourage everybody to continue to push the envelope on those 3 points.
Thank you, Wendy, for that. And thanks a lot, all the panelists. It has been lovely listening to you, and I hope it has been the case for all the audience sitting in the room as well. Let's give a big round of applause to all our panelists.
Now I am done, and I would like to appreciate all the panelists who are here today. I would like to appreciate Leah and Joseph for the amazing work that they've done. And I would like to appreciate all of you for being an incredible audience. Please give yourself a good round of applause. All right, that is much, much better, guys. And have a great day. Thank you, everyone.